welcome back to my vegan kitchen. Everybody's been asking for my sourdough video, and the problem that I had been having is my oven is broken. So the way that I would normally do sourdough is in my big oven in a cast iron pan with the lid on, take it off, put it in, take it out, you know. But I can't do that right now, so I figured, you know what, there's probably people out there who don't have a cast iron pan, who don't have a big fancy oven. Let's do it in a toaster oven, because that's how I've been doing it for the last couple of months, and it's been coming out great.
It's been fantastic.
Thank you. So it's a little bit backwards, this recipe or demonstration. The recipe's not backwards, the demonstration's backwards, because I made this dough yesterday. So now this dough is ready to be, yeah, right? This has been fermenting overnight on my counter. It's ready to be turned out and shaped into a loaf. And then I'm going to show you how to make another batch of dough to be baked tomorrow. Because I bake pretty much every day. Because I give it to my to Maddie, I give it to Kristen, I give it to other people. Also, pizza day takes up a whole day's worth of baking. So I always leave my starter out on the counter because it's never dormant, because I'm using it every single day, and you could see the bubbles in there. I've made a separate video on this channel, I think it was, about the starter.
Mm-hmm.
Just put some flour and water in a jar. Let it sit for the first 2 days on the counter. Pour out half of it. Put 2 or 3 more tablespoons of flour with an equal amount of water till you get this consistency. Yes, it looks gross, but you know, to like a pancake batter. Let it sit. That's your what's going to ferment the dough. So there, I just encapsulated that whole other video for you.
But we do have that other video as well.
You could watch it. So let's get started with shaping this into a loaf. Sourdough is very wet. So you can see what I mean in a second here. It's sticky. It's not a dry dough. So what I usually start by doing is I scrape it away from the sides. This one's a little bit drier. You know, it depends on the humidity too. The heat's been on a lot too, so. Okay, but you see, it's sticky. So I like to start by just folding itself onto itself in the bowl, just to get it going, so that it's easier to work with. This one is actually pretty dry. I've had some wet ones in here that were a little bit of a problem, but you know what? If your dough's too wet, add more flour. If it's too dry, add more water. So we're going to start with a piece of parchment. I don't like to put it on my table. It's too much of a pain in the ass to clean. I keep the same piece of parchment after I'm done. I fold it up and I put it in my little basket down there, and I pull it out every day. Exactly. So I'm just going to sprinkle a little flour, because even though it is parchment, it will stick to the parchment. And whatever flour you have left over, you just put back in the bin. Because basically all I do with that is bake bread, so. See, it's a little sticky.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be, it's McFlurry rules. It's not going to come out right away. There we go. Whatever didn't come out, just add it in.
I think that's the blizzard, by the way, that...
Oh, the McFlurry will fall on you?
Don't dump your McFlurry upside down.
Let's put this back over here. Okay, so here's our dough. And see, it's sticking to the paper. I should have got that landing a little bit better. But I start with the spatula because it's less likely to stick to that than to my hands. And then once I get it going here, I just keep folding it onto itself. And you do the envelope. This part is really sticky, so I'm just going to get some of the flour on that. Oh, this is wonderful so far.
Yeah.
All right, so this is really coming together quite nicely. So remember, side to side, and then you could even do a little roll up like this. And that's our loaf. So I use a smaller pan when I do it in the toaster oven. So this is a nice silicone bread mold. It's got the little wheat on the bottom.
So cute.
It makes such a pretty design when you do that. You can do the little cuts in it, whatever. I don't usually do that because I like the top to be smooth. So what I do is this. I only have my bottom rack in, so I have maximum risage. And what I do is I put it on toast or bagel or waffle, whatever, for just 30 seconds to a minute. And then once that has heated up a little bit, I turn it off. I let it air out slightly so that it's not too hot. And then I put my loaf in there. And the loaf is going to go in there for at least an hour so that it can rise. So while that's rising, I'll show you what I do with the making the dough for tomorrow. So let's air it out. That's pretty nice. Not too hot. Get this right in the middle of the oven because the elements are on the bottom there. And let that sit for an hour. Alright, so now we're ready to make our dough. And I showed you my sourdough starter already. If you smell it, it smells like delicious, vinegary, but not like gross vinegar. Like, it's a nice smell. If it smells bad, it's probably not good. So what I do is I come over to my mixer. I don't wash the bowl because it just flakes off again after it dries, and it goes into there and it's fine. So I dump in as much starter as I can from the jar, because you don't need much to get it started again for the next loaf. So leave some in, obviously, but scrape out as much as you think. Like, that's good. There's just a little coating in there. Well, maybe we'll get a little more. And you could see it's kind of elastic because it's already fermented and starting to get a little bit slimy, which is exactly what we want. We want it to be stretchy. Alright, so we stick the knife in here because we're going to use that to stir. So we're going to come back over to the table and we're going to feed our starter. So we're going to take a tablespoon or two, like a coffee scoop situation, and I like to put in 4 tablespoons of plain flour or bread flour, whatever you're using to bake your bread. It doesn't have to be exact. And then I usually do 2 glugs, 1, 2 of water, and you give it a stir. You don't want it too dry and you don't want it too runny. So like, this is the perfect consistency, like that. So I'm going to cover this up. It stays in the same gross jar until you get so sick of it that you decide to transfer it to a new jar. I put my little Norwex on top of here because it has backlock, so that means it resists forming bacteria. And I just put my rubber band and it goes back into its spot over here and sits there until tomorrow. So now we're going to go back to the mixer. So in the mixer, I already poured the starter onto 3 cups of flour. You don't have to use a dough hook. I'm not going to use one today. I'm going to use a regular paddle today. You could also do this by hand. I always put extra virgin olive oil. 1, 2. That's the perfect amount.
What are you, a bartender?
Yep. I love to use Himalayan salt. Everybody who makes bread online recommends 2 teaspoons or 2, well, I've seen up to 2 tablespoons for a big loaf. But this is a little bit smaller of a loaf, and I don't like it so salty, but it does add flavor. So I'm using 1/2 tablespoon. and I put it away from the starter because that will kill off the starter if you put it directly on there. Like when it's all mixed in, it's fine, but like don't put it right on the starter. It's not good. All right, so I do cheat a little bit. I'm a cheater. I put half a tablespoon of yeast in here because my kitchen is cold. It doesn't ferment as well, so I don't get as much of a rise. So I do cheat a little bit and put half a tablespoon of yeast in there, active dry yeast. Because I don't like a hockey puck. I just want it is fermented, but I do want more height. But you shouldn't have to if your kitchen is, you know, if you live in like Florida or something where it's warm all the time. So I turn this on. I never measure the water. I have about, let's see, 400 milliliters is about 1.5 cups about. I'm gonna start with about 1 cup. I'm gonna get it going a little bit. And then I'm gonna watch, and I'm gonna add slowly until the dough gets to the right consistency. That's looking a little dry. We want it a little bit wet because that's going to help it ferment. That looks perfect. So this is a great consistency. We're going to let this go for about 2 minutes and mix, and then we'll be back. So this is the perfect consistency. I'm just going to scrape it off the paddle. Alright, so I got that off the paddle. We're going to scrape down anything that was on the sides. And we're going to do a little bit of what we did before, fold it onto itself. Perfection. You don't need to put any flour on that. You don't need to put any oil on that. I even just keep my spatula up here so I don't have to wash it. I'm all about not washing it. I must be French. And then I just take a dish towel, put it over the top. You could put that saran wrap on there. And you just let this sit. Let it sit for about 4 or 5 hours. Come back, punch it down like we did at the table, fold it onto itself, and then let it sit overnight. And what you see will be what we had at the table there when you're ready to shape your loaf. So we're going to let that sit. I'll show you what we do when the bread has sufficiently proofed, and we'll be eating bread before you know it. All right, it's been more than an hour. I like using these silicone pans because they get like pregnant.
That's a big one.
So I found this out by accident last week when I didn't have time and I didn't preheat the toaster oven. I don't preheat the toaster oven. So what I'm going to do is I reuse my foil. I just put the foil on top, put it back in. And I'm going to do 425 for 40 minutes. The last 10 minutes, I'm going to take the foil off because I don't want it to be all burny on the top. So we'll come back after 30 minutes. We'll take our foil off, and it's going to be amazing. All right, here it is. I had it cooling off a little bit, but you could see when you use the silicone pan, it kind of makes it like a boule.
Yeah, let's see the bottom of that.
It's got the wheat leaf on it.
Beautiful.
Wonderful. So it's been out of the oven for what, about half an hour, 45 minutes?
We've been watching Emily in Paris.
So let's see what this is all about.
Ooh.
I like it because the crust isn't too hard. Like, I hate it when the crust is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's still hot, and I don't want to crunch it. You know, I don't want to smush it.
Yeah.
So.
Ooh.
That's beautiful.
That is beautiful.
Let's try and get another slice. It's really hard to do when it's still warm, though.
It's all squishy inside.
You really got to let it cool a little bit. But look, you can even go pretty thin.
Mm-hmm. At the top.
Yeah.
Yummy, yummy.
Whoa.
Gorgeous.
Now let's let Maddie give it a shot.
You know what I'm gonna say. I eat this bread almost pretty much every day, honestly,
Yes.
and it never disappoints.
I don't buy bread anymore at the supermarket. I only make my own bread from now on. Squishy, fluffy, perfectly proofed.
So beautiful.
I wish I had some Miyokos to put on that right now,
You
but
don't
we
even
used
need
it all up.
anything. It's so good.
That makes such a delicious grilled cheese.
Delicious everything.
Yeah. I am so in love with this bread. That's why I bought that toaster.
She's not kidding.
Yeah. That toaster elevates it even further. So.
Lady, you got this down to science.
Yep. So you don't need any fancy equipment to make a delicious, beautiful bread. You can even do it in a toaster oven.
Right in the toaster oven.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
Not me.
Alright, I need a little more.
It's just so good.
Yes, thank you all so much for watching. Let us know if you got a sourdough starter going.
My husband comes home and eats it every night. He's got to have a little piece right after work.
It's so good.
Why, thank you.
So, thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you next time. And until then, much love.